Thanks, Martin. And seeing so many people in the room, I think, means that some of what I say is kind of not as necessary as I thought it might be, because I clearly don't have anybody to convince. It's great to see so many people here. I thought it might be useful, if I may, to draw some parallels with the way that I've seen my world change in the last 6, 7, 8 years in government, and how those parallels might apply to any people in the room that might still be doubters. If we take government advertising as an example, in the last 6 months, and I can only claim to have been an observer rather than responsible for this work, 2 government campaigns, one for the Cancer Institute called Pretty Shady, and one for the Transport for New South Wales around not using your mobile phone, have each received over 750,000 views on YouTube. Now, I'm still not quite sure, because the advertising world is trying to get a handle on it, whether that's a particularly good number or an exceptionally good number. It seems to me that 750,000 of anything is a good thing. And a couple of years ago, of course, it was nil because we weren't doing it. Over the last 5 years, I've seen advertising spend in digital media exponentially grow. It's interesting that for many of our target markets, we're trying to reach people under 25, so there's a certain ipso facto about that. But exponentially grow, not because somebody like me was writing a policy, but because the agency understood their customer and were giving good advice by our suppliers on the best way to reach them. Last week, I had a presentation from one of our core suppliers who said it's no longer a conversation about television or digital for advertising, it's a conversation about what screen people are watching. Because actually, if I want to reach young men aged under 25 with television advertising, I was told I can only get 40% of that audience through television without bankrupting the economy. Once you've got 40%, there's no point spending any more, because they just aren't watching television. So a really interesting conversation, not about how do we top up TV with digital, but actually it's sailed. And if there's anybody in the room that didn't realise young people aren't watching TV, then I'd be surprised. But it's worth, for me, the number, 40% is your max, was a really compelling number. And that came from an agency that not only look after us, they also look after Coca-Cola. So I'm pretty sure that they know what they're talking about. It seems like history now, and people around the room, Don Jones and other colleagues of mine, Anthony, from when I was at DFS in its earlier incarnation, made the decision to take print advertising, take job advertising out of print and into online. It seems like an archaic decision from the past. We were actually the first government to do it in terms of interstate governments in Australia, and it's saved us about $1 million a month. That's $1 million a month. And I haven't had a single call in the last 5 years from anybody saying, is there any chance we could go back, because this online stuff isn't really working. It's a real interesting parable about it's now so normal. And I guess, I'm setting up a proposition there to say, so what's next? Because the interesting thing about recruitment is that the cost of buying those ads in print was roughly about $2,000 an ad. In online at that time it was around $200, hence the saving. So a significant change. I was at a presentation the other day where somebody helped me to understand the whole notion of Gov 2.0 for the first time, and it may well be Gov 3.0, I'm not sure, but I've never quite fully understood it. What I understand now is it's about the opportunity to turn a monologue into a dialogue. It's about a two-way conversation where we can hear what the other person has to say. And it's really interesting, again, without any policy or any driving from me or any of my colleagues in the room from DFS, we have over 60 separate Facebook businesses in government now. We have 60 or 70 separate Twitter feeds, some of which, and I always quote my colleague at RFS, but we are currently tweeting news of fires through Twitter because every journalist in New South Wales follows the Commissioner for Rural Fire Service. So the quickest way to get news to journalists about fires is Twitter. The fact that it's Twitter, completely irrelevant. The fact that it's the best medium there's ever been to get that information to those journalists. In my days of working in press rooms 20 years ago, you're lucky if people actually answered the phone. Those messages are going straight to somebody's phone now, and they're proving fantastically effective, and a brilliant case of, yeah, it's a new media, it's actually a much better media. So that's the kind of context, I think, for the notion of where open government might go, is exploring territory that, irrespective of whatever the new fad is, actually deliver services better than we've ever imagined before. Locally within my team, and Anne-Marie Jones and Tom Canning are here, and they're frankly the people who've done most of the work, we're managing the Have Your Say website. And in the last 18 months, after a simple idea that says, which I think came out of the previous Premier's office. Why don't we put all of our consultations in one place? And then Simon Smith, who's my Director General with me now, saying, can we make it a searchable calendar of stuff? Well, actually, there have been 135 separate consultations listed on that website in the 18 months, and 280,000 people have come to that website to look at consultations that governments invite them to take part in. And again, that's 280,000 more than none, which is what it would have been 5 years ago. So really significant change, and I encourage any agency doing consultation work to publish it on that site. It's a great thing that, and very much in line with 2021, that people have access to our information. But that site does the job in a really simple way, and then with brilliantly simple modern technology, you can search by postcode. So if you're an absentee landlord or someone living abroad and you want to know what's happening in your street, you're no longer disenfranchised if you don't get the leaflet drop, because you can read about it online, you can get involved. You can also search by subject, so if you're particularly interested in an area, you can get to that area. The thing that I'm so proud of in terms of the work that Anne-Marie and Tom have done is that it's costing almost nothing to do. So we have, 6 pages in cyberspace sitting within nsw.gov.au doing all those things, and a back end that looks after itself. So it's one of the really interesting things for me with kind of 30 years in the advertising communications game, that most of the things we're doing now are cheaper than what we used to do before and better. That wasn't the case in 1995 when the internet was a horrible, scary thing, and people like CompuServe were trying to steal all of my intellectual property and pay me $5 for it. So life's moved on. It's a very different world. I thought I'd share a couple of things that are in my focus that I'm working with, again, a really strong team with Sam and William and Helen and the team at DFS. We're looking at trying to make sure there are fewer, better touch points. One of the criticisms of government 4 or 5 years ago was it's hard to find stuff. You got, what's a good example? You got, in the old days, RTA looking after driving licenses, Motor Accidents Authority doing green slips, the state, the tax people, what they call the fines people, Office of State Revenue, doing your speeding fines. Well, kind of those are 3 things that you want to know about if you're a driver, and it isn't their job to work out how government works. One of the brilliant things that Mike Pratt's team are doing is actually removing all of those needing to understand government stuff. But we'll do that through fewer and better touch points that more clearly understand that 87% of the people that come to our websites come there because they went to Google first. If there's a single thing I need to learn in my life, it's that the front cover's not as important as it used to be. I used to spend all of my working life worrying about front covers. Now, of course, people are coming in the back door through Google, and I can't do anything about it. So William and I have talked a lot about making sure that all of our websites acknowledge that, rather than assuming that when somebody comes to the front door, we'll hold their hand and walk them through. We don't have that luxury anymore. We're also working really hard with the team on the notion of 24/7. Unfortunately, the World Wide Web has this problem that somebody might log on to a Facebook page at 3:15 in the morning and make a comment, and it's important that our departments are aware of that. The downside of Facebook is that open government means that people can comment at any time, and unfortunately, the rest of the world doesn't work from 9 till 5:30 or 7 till 7, as is the case now with New South Wales. But we're working on some really brilliant strategies to solve that. We're working on simple language, but the single biggest thing that's happened in advertising in the last 10 years is that we've created a community like this. And we have regularly 80 or 90 people coming to forums where industry experts help us to keep up with the astonishing change of pace in a world where really nobody's quite sure what's going on. So the best thing we can do is learn from each other. And on that basis, I think today is a great celebration of moving in the same direction. And I wish everybody well with it. I look forward to being part of it. Thank you.